You are listening to the Next Play podcast, the playbook for high-performing leaders who want to exceed their full potential. From walking on the Ole Miss football team at 5'7", 150 pounds and earning a full D1 scholarship, to coaching thousands around the world and working with massive organizations like IBM. I've learned countless lessons that I'll be sharing right here with you. Join me as I interview some of the most successful people so you too can learn how to focus on always moving forward by deciding, planning, and executing on the next play relentlessly. This is Richie Contartesi with the Next Play podcast, and today I have a very special guest and someone I'm really excited about sharing with you today. Not only her story, her background, her experience, but what she brings to the table in the world of leadership, training, and development. So today I have Jennifer. Can you pronounce it for me?
I can. It's Michalik. It's like Michelob, but without the alcohol.
Perfect. And I should have. Okay, so Michalik.
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay, cool. So she is a talent development professional helping people achieve exceptional results. And I've seen this firsthand. Jennifer has over 15 years of experience developing innovative strategies tailored to the learner and designed to empower people, facilitate change, and drive business results. As the director of training at Systems Pavers, her goal is to help people achieve more than they thought possible. What's really, really interesting, and I'm going to let Jennifer share this, is how she's been a part of multiple companies in the same industry and what she's done for the companies for insane growth. And so I've had an opportunity to work with her and one of her companies, Systems Pavers. But I'm going to we're going to jump into her story and what she has done. But listen, if you are in a position where you want to improve your training and development of your people and focus on growing your people and holding them responsible to what's possible, this is an episode you absolutely want to listen to. So super excited. Jennifer, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here to talk to you and your listeners today. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Awesome. Okay. Super excited. Let's jump into it. So
okay.
You grew up in San Diego, your whole life in San Diego. You did go to Denver, but you're back in San Diego. Talk me through, you went to San Diego State. How did you go from San Diego State into getting in the world of outdoor living, sales, marketing? How did you get there?
Right. So for any of your listeners that want a direct path from A to B, this will not be that path. Just a warning. So I started college majoring in architecture, and I finished college with a degree in finance. My first job out of school was actually at an employee benefits consulting firm. And so that's where I really got my first introduction to training, to be able to facilitate training both for our employees, but also our clients. And that'll be important as we get further down my story. If you fast forward a few years later, we moved to Colorado and purchased a house that needed some landscaping. And so the company that we hired was led by this just amazingly talented guy. His name was Dusty, not making that up. And Dusty and I, built up rapport over time. And one day, someone down the street who had a job, who had a company, had offered me a position, and I was telling Dusty about it. And Dusty said, "No way, you can't take that. You have to come work for me." And I looked at him and I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, come on, man. I don't have any outdoor living experience or landscape experience." And he said, "No, I really want to take my company to the next level. And I think you could really help me with marketing and sales, and remember that architecture experience, presenting plans that, have some spice to them." So that's where I got my initial experience. When we moved back to California, I then started my own design business when we moved back and got a contractor's license. And it was through the work that I did there that I did the landscape for an owner of a landscape distribution company. And so they sold.
So he didn't. So it was like a product. I was gonna say, because he wouldn't have just his own people.
So he owned the company that sold things like sprinklers and pipes and pipe fittings
Got
and
it.
valves and
So the products.
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Got it.
And so he was looking to expand his business to include outdoor living products. The company had hired me to design and help build an outdoor living kind of display space for one of their branches. And we were there taking pictures at night, trying to get the good shots of the display. And he was talking to someone who was passing by on the street, and they were saying, "Oh, that's really beautiful display." And he said, "Yeah, it's great if I only had someone to sell it." And I looked at him, and I had worked with him for probably 9 months to a year. And I looked at him and I said, "I can sell this." And he goes, "I know you can. Do you want to work for us?" And so I thought about it, and I took the position. And so my job then was to go into this landscape distributor whose really core business was not outdoor living products, but to work with both their inside and outside salespeople to help them understand what the product offering was, as well as how to sell it. So that was a super cool experience, very challenging because they were used to selling things that were really commodities. People came in and they needed a sprinkler head or they needed a valve box. But to sell outdoor living products, that's where you get to combine the need and the want. So at any rate, that was a great experience. And then fast forward a few years ahead again. And I
Hold
ended
on.
up.
Let me, there's a couple, there's so much
No
good
fast
stuff
forwarding.
here. Yeah.
Back it up. Okay.
That's cool. So I want to start back to this first landscaper. So he brought you in to do marketing and sales, right? Because he wanted to level up and so walk me through that. Like, how did you do that? What ended up happening with that?
Yep. There was no job description. There's no one in a position before me. So it was a brand new position. And so I just worked with him to learn his business and how he operated, and then started to incorporate like a website, for example. He didn't have a website at the time. So we built that, designed and built that, went with him on a number of client appointments. And so looked for ways that I could help the client understand the benefit of working with Dusty, right?
Got it.
And so in effect, it was training the client to understand what he had to offer, what that company had to offer. And it was really much like the process is when developing new training content. You have a problem or a solution or something that you're trying to sell, and you're starting with a blank slate. You need to figure out how to best go about doing that.
Right.
So it was a great learning experience.
Got it. Okay, cool. So, and then after that, so is that when you went back and started your own business?
Yeah, we moved back to California.
Got it. Okay. So then you started your own business, kind of doing, so when your contractor landscape business ended up being the same thing?
Similar. In Colorado, he had actual crews that he employed. And in California, I didn't employ the crews. I would sub out the work. So other crews would come in and do the work, but I would manage the process. So I would do the design, meet with the homeowner, do the design, do all the ordering, make sure things showed up when they were supposed to and were put where they were supposed to be and done the right way. But other people I was managing the other people doing the work.
Got it. So let's talk about that for a second, because that's a big thing. It's so cool because now you manage the whole operation where you have hundreds of people going door to door and doing exactly what you did here originally with the landscaper. Well, a little bit more detail, but similar. Mm-hmm. So what was that process? Did you feel like what you learned managing, subcontractors, that's tough. So, what would you say was your biggest learning lesson for managing a bunch of subcontractors? Because that's really what it was, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Walk me through that. What was that kind of experience, and how did that groom what you've learned as a leader?
Mm-hmm. That experience was like no other that I had had prior, but what remained the same is really, it's about people working together. It's about people understanding what the overall vision is and the end goal, and helping to get everyone on the same page. And so, any team of contractors that came on was different from the next. Every time it was a new learning experience. Every time you started from scratch, because you had to know the people that you were working with, and what motivated them and what they took pride in, to help create a product that was really worthy of the overall vision and what we owed to the homeowner.
Got it. Did you have challenges managing, subcontract? Like what
that
would
be
you
a
say?
Whole nother podcast. Sure. There are definitely some challenges there. A lot of the subcontractors had been in the business longer than I had. And so, I had to prove my worth. I had to prove not only that I knew what I was talking about, but I also had to be humble enough to say when I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so it was a great opportunity to be able to say, as a case may arise, oh, I've never done this before. Can you show me, right? You're the expert. Show me how you suggest we do this, or what do you think?
Ooh, I like that.
That was a basis for a lot of great working relationships, for sure.
Do you think that that's like a really powerful lesson, that just, even if you're not managing contractors, you're just managing an internal team? I really like that. Like, being able to say, hey, I'm not the end all be all. And especially if you're younger and you have, people you're managing are older, having that approach of being open to suggestions or allowing them to show you. Do you feel like that what you learned there has kind of helped and shaped to the leadership style you have today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with each step along the way, as I said, it was not a straight point A to point B kind of journey. But in looking back, there was some knowledge gained from each step along the way that helped lay the foundation for what would be next. I just didn't realize it at the time. It's not until you see it in hindsight. Sure. But it absolutely, those experiences have absolutely shaped how I approach training and the talent development process, for sure.
I'm super pumped to get into that.
Okay.
Before we do, so then you worked, you said, hey, I can sell this.
Yeah.
So walk me through that. So how long did you end up doing that for? Because at that point you essentially walked away from your business though, right? You just said,
I did.
Okay. What was your reasoning behind that? Was it just like you were ready to move on, or you thought this next opportunity was just too good to let go?
I was excited about the opportunity, for sure. And I was at the point in my business where I was going to need to make a decision to start buying equipment and start hiring my own crews. And so I decided at that point in time that I would rather be excited about the new opportunity than to go into that kind of investment and take that risk. It was just, a better decision for me at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So what happened after that? So you started working for this company. Walk me through that.
I started working for the company, and while I was able to go make sales, really my job was to make sales through other people, right? Through the inside and outside sales reps. And so within the first 6 months, their outdoor living sales increased by 60%. And then it increased by another 40% the next year. And I wasn't even working with the entire company. So I started to work with a group of people. They were the champions. They were actually outdoor living champions is what we called them. So a small team. So we could start working at having them understand, start to get excited about it, bring it back to their branches, and then help to train others. In addition to working with the outside salespeople that had a roster of clients that were buying these products from somewhere else, or just didn't realize that the opportunity that might have been there. I started by saying, if someone is coming in to buy pavers, they're buying something else from someone else. So it's never just pavers. It's pavers and an outdoor kitchen and a grill or a water feature or a fire pit or synthetic turf or lighting. Like there's always something. There's I try to stay away from always, never, and hate. 3 really strong words. But
That's good. I like that. Always, never, and hate.
Typically always something more to that project than just what they're coming in for in the outdoor living space. So the way we went about that, or the way that I went about that, was working with those. It started with 10 individuals in the inside sales team. And we would meet periodically when we could. And I would give them information in a way that they felt confident that they could go talk to the person coming up to them at the counter about this product. And it was that simple. I still refer to it in this day of give me 3 to 5 bullet points, 3 to 5 bullet points that you can tell a salesperson that they can go out and say to their customer or their homeowner, and they don't need to know all the different colors and shapes and sizes and maker. They just need to know 3 to 5 bullet points to get the homeowner customer interested. And the rest we can follow up on. The rest we can work out. The rest you'll learn the more that you sell. So that's really how it started.
That's so true. It's like you just need that to learn how to articulate a little bit on the front end. And once you've got that dialed in and they have interest, it's much easier to go about the conversation versus trying to do too much upfront. So that's interesting. Okay. So you actually worked there. It was already an inside sales team. Mm-hmm. And you worked directly with them. So mm-hmm. Now, from what I'm understanding, you found other companies that were already selling to the type of buyers who could buy your product, and kind of went through them. And was it more of like a referral type thing where if they were looking for XYZ product, then they would be like, oh, well, you should go talk to Jennifer's team for that?
Yeah. In some cases, the contractor might have already been selling or installing pavers. In other cases, the contractor was focused on solely landscape services, so the sprinklers and laying sod and things like that. And we introduced the contractor into this additional line of business that they could choose to pursue. And there are a couple that still come to mind today that were really great to work with, and they're still selling those outdoor living products today.
Which company, or was that before where you're at now, or?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So then what was obviously you're leading your inside sales team. What was the next path after that?
So a little bit of a bump in the road when that company that I was working for was purchased by another company. Mm-hmm. And after it was purchased by the other company, the business strategy changed a bit. The direction changed a little bit, and it just wasn't really a fit anymore. It's an overused term, but it just wasn't really a fit anymore. Yeah. So I worked for a different landscape distributor, much in the same context, who shortly after I worked there, they were really like gung-ho on building up their outdoor living business. And I would say within 9 months, they decided instead to expand their current business as opposed to extend into a new business. And so I left there. And, fortunate along the way to have all of those different experiences with those companies and those people. They absolutely shape who you are as a person. And whether it's a challenge or whether it's a breeze, you have to be respectful of the people that you spent time with in those experiences, because, they help you evolve into the person that you are. So at any rate, the worlds collided when I got a call from Systems Pavers, and they were looking for a director of training. And the reason why I say the worlds collided is because I had that training experience from when I worked at the employee benefits company. I had outdoor living experience from working with the distributors. I had training experience with the outdoor living distributors. I had sales experience from Colorado on my own and with the distributors. And it all kind of came together. Fortunately for me, it all came together.
How did they find you? Because that's such a good fit, and today more than ever, it's so hard to hire good people. How did they find you?
A recruiter found me on LinkedIn.
And just looking at it's Yeah. Okay. So a recruiter found you, they called you, they told you about it, and you're like, oh my God.
I was like, oh my gosh, this is the position for me. Like, this is it. I think it took a little bit of convincing, for me to convince them, because I didn't come in with probably the type of experience that
Right.
they were expecting. And
You have it. It's
you'd have
just
to
not
ask them.
portrayed. Yeah. Go ahead.
Right. Well, you'd have to ask them what they were thinking when they brought me in, but I think it might have been curiosity more than anything else. But that's how I kind of got my foot in the door. So
Awesome. Okay. So let's talk about your just development and training. What's your this freaking light? What's your philosophy around training today, right? Like, so you have such a long span, and you worked, as a leader in multiple different capacities, including your own business. What's your approach today, and what kind of did you bring in with Systems Pavers as far as your philosophy and approach?
all right. So there's two things I can probably talk about here. So the first is that, I really see that developing talent is a scientific art. And what I mean by that is, you're dealing with people in the first place. You're always dealing with people. And as a trainer or talent developer, you likely always have two customers. One is that person in front of you, and the other is the company you work for, right? So you always have to think about both parties involved. But at any rate, so you start with the person, and, there's a lot of science-based processes and theories, and, you can talk about neuroscience, and you look at different assessments in terms of learning styles and personality types and communication styles and all of those things. Well, if you think about all of those scientific things having a different color, one's red, one's blue, one's yellow, one's orange, they all have a different color, right?
Yep.
The way they come together, that's what creates the vibrant picture that is then talent development. You can't paint a landscape with just one color, right? You need to think of, so as an educator, as a talent developer, one needs to keep all of those things in mind, and you have to put yourself in the shoes of that person that's standing in front of you, or nowadays that's sitting across the screen from you in Zoom.
Right. Yeah. Which is even harder.
No two people are the same. No two training sessions are ever going to be the same. Every time someone creates a work of art, it's going to be slightly different, even if they're painting the same subject matter, right? Same holds true for training and talent development. You can lead an off-the-shelf course 10 times, and 10 times it's going to be slightly different because of the people that are involved in the room and their makeup.
So how do you go about doing that? Like, so because you're doing trainings pretty often. So how do you go about understanding the room? And, I love the analogy. How do you go about, number one, understanding, and then number two, being able to deliver where they resonate, where they get it, they understand, because they're different.
Right. So understanding the room, man, if I had a formula, I might share it, but I think that is absolutely an art. You just have to understand, and it's something that I think some trainers, might not realize, is that, we have content and we need to get that content to people. But the key there is that we're getting it to people. And in order to get it to people, you have to understand what those people's perspectives are, what experience they come from. And it only takes a little bit of time to try to get to know someone enough that you can learn what their motivations are, or what their points of excitement are, what their motivation is for being there. Yeah. And then you can train or tailor the way that you deliver the content to that, to them. So right. I see training, the actual execution of training, the delivery of training, and sales as being incredibly similar.
Yeah, because in a training, you're selling an idea, a
Correct.
concept.
Correct.
Right. you're not necessarily, you're doing a training and you're delivering content, but you're selling them on the idea of not just filling up their notebook, but taking action on the content.
Correct.
Right?
And it's really keeping in mind what's in it for them.
Right.
I'm on a mission to deliver this content, but it's nothing if it doesn't mean something to them.
Right. Do you ask beforehand? Do you like if you're in a training with multiple people, do you try and connect with who's going to be there beforehand and ask some of those questions? Because sometimes it's tough in a group, where it's like, and also peer to peer, a lot of people, they don't know each other, or if they know each other, they're not necessarily willing to share with the group. Like, how do you go about getting what they want beforehand?
Right. We really don't have the opportunity to get what they want beforehand, but we do know what they need. Right. And I mentioned earlier, in outdoor living sales, it's a combination of determining what people want and then what they need to achieve those wants. Same exact premise holds true for training. So we don't get an opportunity to do that ahead of time. We do that in the group. And the good thing about doing it while in the group is that then the experienced trainer doesn't get any preconceived notions about the people who are coming in. They can't read something on paper and kind of generalize, oh, well, this person has a ton of sales experience, so they're going to be difficult. No, that's not the case. That's not the case. So we talk to them kind of day one, hour one. We get to know them, and we get to know them better over time as well, and so can adjust along the way.
Got it. Okay, cool. And so as far as like talent development goes, do you, when you do your trainings, is it usually kind of a one-off thing, or do you have like, a talent development type, method that you use? What's kind of your thoughts, or your, if I'm in a leadership role and I've got new salespeople or sales leaders starting, what do you feel is a good approach to not just training, but, constantly keeping them growing and developing? Because that's always the challenge, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because if they're salespeople, for example, you want to get them out selling, but they can't get out selling and be successful at it until they learn. But they can't really learn everything all at one time, right? So it's like just by the nature of it, it's process. So, for that leader, I would think it would be important to understand the difference between training and learning. So to me, the way I define it is, training is really a sharing of information, right? Training has a beginning and an end, a start and a finish. Right. But learning is actually the application of that training plus that person's thirst for knowledge. The more hungry they are for the knowledge, the sooner they can apply that training, right? The better the application, the better the learning. So learning should be looked at as an ongoing process, whereas training is a moment in time. And learning should have no end.
So good. So, oh man. So there's a lot there. So I like your formula too. That was really good.
You. Well, finance major, remember?
Yeah. I love this. It's so true. I mean, learning it never ends, right? When you stop learning, you're done. This is where you see complacency becomes a big thing. So if I'm a business owner or I'm a VP of sales and I'm wanting to get my team to continuously learn, like, it's just because you learn how to overcome objections or how to you're always going to have new things. There's always going to be like new ways of doing things, or something's going to be different than anything that you've experienced before. You have to always be learning. So how do you kind of create that vibe and culture around growth and learning versus just what most people do, which is let's do our onboarding training and then,
right. Good luck.
Even if that, because crazy enough, Jennifer, I think you know this, but I speaking with companies recently and they're like, was one particular, and they're like, oh yeah, we just hire seasoned people. And I was like, so Like no training, no accountability, no. I'm like, interesting. Like, so that is a thing. It's a very common thing. So how do we keep that? Like, I got to keep learning, And it's interesting is of course, what do you think their biggest challenge is? Complacency and inconsistency. And like, so anyways, okay. So how do you keep that going? How do you create that?
So I would say, as a leader, the leader needs to make learning a priority. And I don't mean that it takes precedence over making the sale. That's not what I mean. I mean, the leader needs to build learning into a given week, every other week, month, whatever it is, as something that is important to the company as well as to that individual associate. Right. Yeah. So it can be as simple as 15 minutes in a stand-up meeting, or a status meeting or a sales meeting to say, hey, this salesperson made a great sale, almost lost it, sealed the deal. Tell us what you did, right? So there's excitement around that sale was made. That person has a chance to share. Like, it doesn't necessarily even need to be prepared training materials, though it can be, but it's a matter
case
of
study. That's a case study, right?
Correct.
It's just
and it's a case study where you tell that salesperson, hey, I'm going to call on you, so have some thoughts ready. And you call on them and they're ready to go. And if we're talking about salespeople, they're going to love talking about their sale.
Oh my gosh.
That's what they do, right?
That's what they do.
And so, to leverage success and excitement and sharing that with the rest of the team, that's a really easy way to keep that going. But that's just one example. Definitely, you could have more structured training programs. You could have learning management systems. You can set qualifications for different levels of learning. It's all there's a number of different ways, but it all starts and ends with the leader.
Right. I like those ideas. I mean, just even having those, if you're doing a weekly huddle, for example, of just as part of it, just calling out and sharing. So sharing a story. I know a group that they do as part of their weekly huddle, they play a recorded call, and they'll play a really good one and a really not good one. And it's not like a dog on the person. It's just, it's, hey, how do we learn from this call so that we don't all make the same mistake? So I thought that was pretty interesting. So, you did bring up the LMS, and obviously a lot of people are implementing LMSs today. It is obvious, it can have a lot of benefit, but it could also be a giant waste of time, right? And resources. And so, what have you found to be helpful in terms of working with an LMS? Because have you guys implemented an LMS?
There was one that was in place when I first started at Systems Pavers, and it had only been in place for a short period of time, maybe 3-6 months or so.
Yeah.
But it was there when I got there.
Got it. Okay. And is it something that you're emphasizing and trying to grow on, or are you going a different route with learning?
So we have approached learning in a number of different ways. And actually, as we speak today, are I would say enhancing our approach to learning yet again. But we created a lot of content that could be put on the learning management system. And the reason for that is because you're absolutely leveraging knowledge and time, and you're making it available to people who, in our particular company, most people are out of the office more than they're in. And so it gives them the ability to take their appointment, but then watch a lesson when they have time, or to go back and refer to a lesson. Let's say they're going to go out and they know that the homeowner is interested in fire pits. Well, we have a handful of lessons that are all related to fire pits that they can watch right before the appointment, right? To refresh their memory and to give them those 3 to 5 bullet points they need to go sell. So we do have a lot of content that we created that's on that LMS. We have a lot of content that is instructor-led content, specifically for our new hires, as well as we will do instructor-led content for some of our more seasoned associates as well. And We used to do training in person, which that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah. Is that because of COVID? It's
Yeah, we at the time we had a multi-week program, and we had looked into and then started doing one of those weeks online on Zoom. It wasn't an 8 to 5. It was kind of a, period of time throughout the day, a couple hours each day. And then when COVID hit, we were tasked with now putting all of our training, instructor-led training, on Zoom.
Yeah.
And so it's great that we had that kind of foundation built, because we were able to, I would say, relatively easily, though it was an undertaking, to convert all that training to be, Zoom-based training. But then all of our training went to that kind of Zoom-based platform.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And as a leader, do you feel like you've been, or what's your kind of philosophy around doing trainings over Zoom, right? Like as someone who does them myself, I love the in-person.
Yeah.
I do virtual. There's nothing like that in person.
Yeah.
Have you found any secrets to doing Zoom trainings that have really helped you, that, someone listening that also has a virtual team can try or use?
Sure. So for the facilitator, there is nothing like being in person.
Yeah,
absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
We actually did a survey of some of our recent graduates, and the question was, would you prefer to be in person for training or have it held remotely via Zoom? They all said remotely via Zoom.
Really?
Every single one of them said they were fine being on Zoom. So
Wow.
To your point, it's really the trainer, the facilitator, that needs to adjust to that. And it is an adjustment. I would say, if I were to throw out a couple of topics, I am half Italian, and I speak with my hands quite a bit. You can't do that on Zoom.
Yeah, it's
like as much as you want to, you can't. And so, some of the tips and tricks is to record yourself, record a session that you've led, and see what other people are seeing. Again, it goes back to putting yourself in someone else's shoes. See if you're still getting that variation in your voice, the variation in tempo, the connection with people. Are you still looping people in? There are still people on the other side of that screen. You can still ask them questions. You can still call on them. You need to engage them in that way. And, another tip is, if before you were able to lecture for 2 hours straight in front of someone, I would highly suggest that is not the approach that you take now if you're doing this training on Zoom.
Right.
You need to give people a screen time break. They need to get up. They need to move around. You need to provide different ways for them to learn as well. So maybe now I would say consider it being a little bit more activity or exercise, not based, but more of that incorporated into the learning experience. And that's the thing, is that you need to look at it as a learning experience, not a training class, right? What experience are you creating for this person so that they can take this information and go out and make a difference in their own lives and in the lives of whoever they're working with? That's what it's about. So
yeah, no, it's true. I mean, the interaction, like as a facilitator, in person, you're using energy from this person and everyone's laughing, and then you say, hey, this person, and talking, and you're always, asking questions and having them talk back to you as a group. Zoom, everyone's like muted, and it's like, so it's much more challenging. And I like the idea. Or go ahead, you were going to say something.
Yes. When leading a training session on Zoom, cameras have to be on.
Oh my gosh. So there's nothing like when there's, I'm like, what? How can you not ever?
Right.
That's cool.
And
so
again,
you just make that a requirement?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They need to have a working camera, and it needs to be on. It's a matter. Yeah. It comes down to kind of a matter of respect, right? We're spending our time together, respect each other enough to be on camera. Yes, be muted in case the doorbell rings or the dog barks or whatever. But yeah, you need to be on camera. And you had asked, if I had advice for leaders in terms of training or learning, and that's another kind of piece of food for thought is that when they're participating or observing a training session or a meeting, for them to consider to be on camera as well, not multitasking. Just that's a good example, right? It goes to creating that culture. So
yeah, because that's a thing for sure.
It is a thing. It can be a thing.
Right.
I've heard it's a thing. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you can kind of tell too, but it's like, yeah, no, that's really, and I think even setting expectations beforehand, right? Like, here's what we're doing. Here's the expectations as far as participation. Because that's the deal in person. It's much easier in person, but as long as you're constantly keeping them engaged with, now having to make this light come back on, as long as you're constantly keeping them engaged by asking questions and making them respond, and it's very simple. But even if they're looking at you, they might not really be engaged. So maybe more breaks.
Another tip I would give is just to not, from a facilitation perspective, don't overcomplicate it. Don't use unproven technology, or don't use 5 different pieces of technology if that's really not going to further your message. Just make sure that you're delivering so that you're delivering value, right?
There's outcomes. It's not like, but we had this cool technology and we were able to do polls and all this stuff, and everyone's like, and then they're like, so what'd you learn? And they're like, I don't know. I really don't know what.
Right.
So, okay, cool. Awesome. Well, listen, this was really, really, really valuable. As far as leadership and training goes, Jennifer, what's your next play? What's your level up as far as continuing to grow as a leader and inspiring others to exceed their potential week in and week out?
So my immediate next play might be shorter term than what you're asking, but we're in the process of analyzing skill gaps and revamping effectively our new hire training. And so we have a hard deadline that we are working to meet, and we're going to use everything that we've learned and incorporate some new techniques and a lot of new content into that. And that's a big undertaking because our training program have a huge amount of respect for it. And, a company has been in business for 30 years, and that doesn't happen
a long time,
right? So to change the way that we approach training and learning is a big, exciting deal. It's a big, exciting deal. So that is the immediate next play. We are in the midst of planning and project planning and creating content and incorporating exercises and activities and ways to gauge people's understanding and ways to give them hands-on experiences while they're going through this university with us. So that's the immediate next play.
Love it. Awesome. Yeah. Well, I know you're going to crush it. I know it's
going to be
amazing. And you got a great team. So
I do.
Cool.
I do have a great team.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for being here and sharing your story and the lessons you learned along the way. And I know that if you're listening right now, you absolutely got a few really, really key nuggets that you can use in your learning, your training, your development within your organization. Because if you are not constantly learning, training, and not just learning and training, but also holding your team accountable to that learning and training on a weekly basis, it falls apart. It just ends up being a notebook full of notes, and who wants?
And it's on the shelf, and then you don't look at it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so very much for having me. It was great to see you again and a pleasure speaking with you. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to have you, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Play podcast. If you liked the show, make sure to leave us a review. For more resources, visit relentlessuniversity.com or download the free Relentless University app. And if you're interested in having me speak at your next event, visit relentlessrichie.com. Until next time.